The Israeli-Palestinian conflict rages on with hundreds killed on both sides. Hello, I'm Anand Naidu and this is The Heat. Days after fighters from the Hamas group launched a surprise attack on Israel, killing hundreds of Israelis, the crisis continues to escalate. Israel is pounding Gaza with airstrikes and hundreds of Palestinian civilians have been killed. Israel has announced a total blockade of the Gaza Strip, and it has also called up 300,000 reservists. Meanwhile, Hamas is holding Israeli hostages inside Gaza. For more now, joining me from Jerusalem is Amotz Asa-El. He is a senior commentator with the Jerusalem Post and a research fellow at the Shalom Hartman Institute. With us from London is Abdel Atwan. He is editor-in-chief of al-Youm. Also joining the discussion from Jerusalem is pollster and political analyst Barak. And with us too from New York is Omar Baddar. He is a political analyst. Welcome to all of you to the show. Amos, let me start with you. This was the deadliest raid into Israel in decades, and I'm sure at some point there's going to be a formal inquiry into what happened. How was the country caught by surprise, despite its intelligence services, despite its military?
I think that there was simply a misreading of Hamas's both intentions and abilities. The politicians failed to assess Hamas's intentions, and the generals failed to assess their abilities, hence the surprise. And in the annals of military history, this will surely go down as a landmark. It is the first, if I'm not mistaken, the first ever massive deployment of terrorists, the definition of which is warriors who are deliberately assigned with attacking civilians. An ordinary terror attack, the kind that the West has faced in recent decades, deploys at most several dozen people, and they target several locations. That's what we faced in the past. And this is entirely different. That is why it was militarily unexpected and caught Israel unprepared.
There have also been reports, Amotz, that the Egyptians had warned the Israelis weeks ago that something was afoot. Is there anything to that?
I have no idea. If it's true, it's very alarming. But frankly, in the broader scheme of things, it's very marginal. In terms of the Israeli public's reading of the situation, with or without such a warning, this is a major debacle for Benjamin Netanyahu personally. And in my assessment, sooner or later, it will end his career and also define it.
Abdel Atwan, the Hamas attack against Israel has been called shocking but hardly surprising. Why did Hamas conduct this strike at this time when it knew that, given the scale of the attack, that it would provoke a very fierce response from Israel?
Hanan, thank you for taking me in your program. What do you expect Hamas or other resistance movement to do? When Gaza Strip under blockade, a vicious blockade by the Israeli government, when the Israeli actually depriving the Palestinian from any of their rights, when the Palestinians signed the Oslo agreement to establish their own independent state and give up more than 75% of their territories, what do you expect them to do when they never had this state, when the Israeli were very arrogant, when the Israeli actually launched 6 wars against the people in Gaza? The Palestinians actually were hoping the international community will side with them and tell the Israeli to actually imply and carry out all the agreements, all the UN Security Council resolution. So it was a frustration. It was Israeli war against them. Israel now is apartheid state according to Amnesty International.
Yeah.
They have the most right-wing Israeli government ever since the establishment of Israel 75 years ago. So the Palestinians entitled to resist the occupation,
Okay.
to fight for their rights.
Right, Abdel,
Yes.
Bari, Atwan, there have been efforts by the Israelis to normalize relations with their Arab neighbors. A lot of those efforts are underwritten by the United States. And more recently, we have seen the United States try to make an effort to normalize relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia. Did this attack have anything to do with undermining those efforts?
Well, actually, the Palestinians, they opposed the normalization hope. But after that, the Arab countries who normalized the relation with Israel and signed so-called Abraham peace, they expect them to do something. They gave the Israeli a huge present when normalizing relation with them. So they expected them, like what the Emirates said, that they will at least freeze the settlement, at least to improve Palestinian life, at least to stop storming Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is a holy place for more than 2 billion Muslims all over the world. But what happened is completely the opposite. So what the Palestinians can do after that? They realized that the Arab let them down, international community let them down, United Nations let them down. So they decide to resist and to defend themselves. As I said, the Israeli now blockading Gaza Strip completely. And the Israeli minister said, they are animal. The Palestinians are animal. And, we will bomb any help to them coming from Egypt.
All right.
Do you think this is a normal relationship, a normal neighborhood?
Mitchell, Barak, Israel, as I said earlier on, has responded with a ferocious bombing of Gaza. It's leveled a number of residential apartment blocks in that strip. In addition, Israel is now blocking supplies of electricity, of fuel, of food, and of water to the Gaza Strip. It's a heavily dense populated area in the Middle East. There have been accusations that this is collective punishment against the Palestinians in Gaza. How do you respond to that?
I wouldn't even respond to it. I would just like to, say, Abdel Bari Atwan is right. Meaning, in order to stop the blockade of a terror organization named Hamas, which is running the Gaza Strip, helped by the Islamic Jihad, why don't you just kill more babies? Kill more women, take more elderly people hostage. I mean, you guys got the Guinness Book of World Records as far as most elderly killed in a day, most women raped in a day in a terror attack, most babies killed. The news right now that I saw was 40 bodies of babies were being carried out of a kibbutz. You're talking, I didn't call you animals. In one kibbutz, 40 babies were killed. This is to punish the occupation. You want to call it resistance? That's resistance. This is, 15 years ago, Israel left Gaza and they withdrew the settlements. We withdrew a cemetery even. And you would think that the people might elect a government which was not a terror organization. Hamas has 75 of 140 or however many parliamentary seats. Yeah. Been given billions and billions and billions of dollars in aid from the U.S., the EU, Qatar. Okay. So what do they do with it? Build tunnels, rockets and all these other things. And then talk about resistance and the Abraham Accords and better conditions for Gaza.
Mitchell, my question was why
the point of this discussion is why to take hostages, and you're asking me about a blockade of electricity and water. You want to stop the blockade? Let some hostages out. You think Hamas could do that? They've got 100 hostages at least, and the Islamic Jihad another 40. I can assure you, you start letting out hostages, you'll get some electricity. You start letting out hostages, you get some water. This is not collective punishment. This is people elected a terror organization to represent them in a government, and they are fulfilling the will of the people. And by the way, the streets were filled with celebration. This is great. So what do you expect?
Okay.
What do you expect is going to happen?
All right.
There's going to be a response. It's going to be a serious response. And Israel is going to protect its citizens after this barbaric and very, very evil attack, which targeted civilians, which killed civilians, which took civilians hostage.
Yeah.
No person was immune, from 80-year-olds to 8-month-old babies.
All right. Look, that response that you were talking about. Okay.
Shouting the name Allah is great.
Okay.
What religion?
Mitchell, I've got to get to the other guests. Okay.
Allah
One moment.
Great to kill babies.
I've got to get to the other guests. Mitchell, just one moment. That response that you're talking about is already taking place. Omar Baddar, what do you make of what Mitchell Barak just told us? I mean, many civilians have been killed by Hamas during this raid. Civilians have been taken hostage. They're now being held in Gaza.
Yeah, there's no question that any attack on civilians anywhere is an act of terrorism and is illegitimate and indefensible. What's remarkable about what Mitchell is saying is that he's echoing precisely the logic that makes targeting Israelis legitimate in the eyes of Hamas. When Hamas targets Israeli citizens, they say these are the people who elected the government of Netanyahu, a government that is imposing a system of brutal occupation and apartheid on Palestinians, a suffocating siege on Gaza where they don't allow them to have freedom, can't go in and out. Israel, by the way, regularly uses Gaza as a firing range. There have been multiple assaults on Gaza in the past couple of decades in which hundreds of Palestinian children were killed and buried under the rubble in what every single major human rights organization calls war crimes, indiscriminate bombings of civilian areas. And this is the reality, is that people like Mitchell are so dehumanizing of Palestinians that they're under this bizarre illusion that you can keep millions of Palestinians captive in the Gaza Strip. You can deny them water and electricity at will. You can prevent them from going in and out, from being able to have an economy, from being able to have medical equipment to treat people with cancer who can't get any help because they're under this siege that is considered illegal under international law, and that you can continue bombing Gaza whenever you feel like it, and that the people in there are just going to lay down and do nothing. That's the insanity of people who dehumanize Palestinians, and it's the very insanity that brought us precisely to this point. Israel, over and over again, has believed that by squeezing Palestinians more and carrying out more bombings and violence, that they're going to subdue Palestinians and end their struggle for freedom. Well, I'm sorry, here we are again. This path has led to more and more violence, and until Israel starts recognizing Palestinians as equal human beings who are deserving of the same freedom and dignity and human rights that Israelis enjoy, we're going to be stuck in a very, very long and ugly cycle of violence. And this is precisely the direction we're going into right now.
Amotz, we just heard Mitchell Barak tell us very graphically about, what takes place when Hamas took civilians hostage, when Hamas killed civilians. I mean, there are those who will argue that what Hamas did in Israel was in response to decades of Israeli oppression, abuse by Israel. We heard that from Omar Baddar. It's been called a Palestinian resistance in some quarters. How does Israel respond to that?
Right, so let me comment about that, please, Anan.
Yeah.
With your permission.
Sure.
The very terminology of resistance connotes liberty, a struggle for national liberty. Hamas doesn't give a damn about liberty, in fact, and sees it a threat. It has been in power now in Gaza for 17 years, during which it oppressed its own people's liberty. So first of all, don't use the word resistance as if this is about a liberation movement. What it is about is what my distinguished colleagues here are denying, or at least not discussing. This is about Islamism. This is about jihadism. This is what they say, this is what they think, and this is what they do. Now I'm asking you, please, both Omar and Abdel, tell me, are you for or against jihadism? Are you for or against Islamism? Do you realize that what they just waged at Israel is the same kind of Islamist threat that is being waged at the entire free world? Do you or do you not?
Okay, let me put that question to Abdel Bari Atwan.
Let me say one thing. Gaza is a cage. I was born in a refugee camp in Gaza. There are 2 million people caged, and they are treated in a very humiliating way.
This you discussed already. We also have what to say about that. Tell us about Islamism. Are you for it or against it?
I did not interrupt you. Let me complete. You are a
But you're not answering my question.
All right,
I will interrupt.
Amotz, I will get back to you. Let Abdel Bari Atwan finish his comment, and I'll get back to you. Amotz, I'll get back to you. Yeah, go ahead, Abdel Bari Atwan.
I'm surprised. People are terrorized by the Israeli raids. As I said, people there, the Israeli counting the calories to the Palestinian in Gaza. And there is a collective punishment against the Palestinian, not just now, for the last 17 years. It is not new, this collective punishment. And all the Palestinian, or most of the Palestinians are suffering that. I will ask you a question. Okay, Abbas, Arafat, they signed peace treaty with you, and they have been negotiating for 30 years with you. What is the outcome? What happened to the American repetition that there should be two-state solution? The Palestinians should have a state. What did you do for that?
Yeah.
Now you are telling me that
Hamas in the year 2000, all the goods were put on the counter in the presence of the President of the United States, by the Israeli Prime Minister of the day, Barak, in behalf of the Israeli people, with my personal public support. We put the goods on the counter. What we got in return was war of suicides. That's what made the most of the Israeli public turn their back at the peace process, not anything else.
Okay.
We came there in good faith, and we offered the land for peace deal.
Okay.
It was rejected by the Palestinians. That's what happened. Why do you make believe you don't know this? It's basic.
Okay, Mitchell Barak, there was a very harsh op-ed in the Israeli newspaper Haaretz, which blames Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, saying he, quote, completely failed to identify the dangers he was consciously leading Israel into when he established the government of annexation and dispossession. Benjamin Netanyahu has been in power for years, and in those years we've seen more Palestinian land being confiscated, being used for settlements. We're now seeing Israel being referred to as an...
Wait a second, when you say confiscated, who confiscates land here? I don't understand.
Well,
someone confiscates land? Or there are court decisions, or there's land that doesn't belong to anyone. Someone actually confiscated land? Anand, your whole angle here is, throughout this whole program, 20 minutes, all I'm seeing is a ticker that says, Gaza under siege after Hamas attacks inside Israel. That's what you're focusing on, the Gaza siege? Meaning, this was the greatest terror attack ever in the history of Israel. 900 people are dead and we're still counting. 150 are held by Hamas and Islamic Jihad in Gaza. And you're worried on your whole program with your ticker about Gaza under siege after Hamas attacks.
Okay, we get it. Yes.
You should have a little bit of balance in your reporting here and your angle.
The fact that we have you on the show, listening to your viewpoint, is balanced.
He's going to pay the price politically for this debacle. A man who spent his entire career as Mr. Security, as fighting terror, and the greatest security debacle and terror attack in Israel happened on his watch. He will pay for it. Okay, that's for sure. In the meantime, he's been working behind the scenes with Saudi Arabia, and if the Palestinians really wanted to leverage that relationship with Saudi Arabia and the United States, which was coming in and saying there has to be a guarantee to the Palestinians, they could first stop paying salaries of terrorists. We've been saying this on this program for years and years and years. Every time you kill a Jew, a Palestinian, or you're in jail, depending on how many Jews, Israelis you kill, you get paid more money. What can you say about the Palestinian Authority? You want to call it resistance? You're supporting terror, killing of civilians.
Okay, I want to go to Omar Baddar.
What happened?
Okay, Mitchell, I want to go to Omar Baddar. Omar, there is now, Omar, firstly, let me ask you to respond, Omar, to what I mentioned earlier on, that Palestinian land has been taken for settlements. Mitchell Barak disputes that.
Look, the entire peace process was built on the idea that Israel was going to withdraw from the occupied territories as it is obligated under international law. They're not doing Palestinians any favor. And throughout the peace process, all they've done is build more and more illegal settlements throughout the occupied territories. And that is precisely why those negotiations failed, because there was not good faith effort on the part of Israel to allow Palestinians to have a viable independent state. And then Palestinians resorted to other forms of resistance. They went for economic boycotts. Those are deemed economic terrorism. They go to the UN to try to hold Israel accountable. The US intervenes and vetoes any effort for accountability. They march on the Gaza border without weapons, as they did in 2018. Israel opens fire and kills several journalists and activists and medics. Snipers taking fire and targeting those people. And when you hear Mitchell and others talking about this as the biggest terrorist attack, it's only biggest because of who the victims are. But the actual biggest terrorist attack took place in 2014, when over the course of one summer, Israel killed more than 2,200 Palestinians throughout the Gaza Strip, including 550 Palestinian children who are buried under the rubble in Gaza. Yeah. That is an act of terrorism. Just because Israel does it in the name of security does not change the fact that it's a war crime as documented by every major human rights organization in the world. That is the trajectory. And again, you hear Mitchell talking about, yes, Gaza gets that's what you get what you deserve. And you hear the defense minister talking about cutting off electricity and water because the people in Gaza are animals. That is the very level of dehumanization and racism that drives the entire conflict. And it's precisely why we are here today. What we need is a push from the international community to start holding Israel responsible for its actions, to end this idea of unlimited military funding for Israel.
I think it's smoking.
Okay, I want to. Sorry, Mitchell. I want to go to Amotz. Amotz, this is for you. We've just heard.
Anan, I want to ask Omar this simple question: Do you or do you not condone Hamas's location or locating of its military bases and outposts in the middle of the population, and thus exposing them to Israel's attacks? What they do, and this also has been stated by human rights organizations, a statement that you conveniently ignore. This is their method. This is their system. It's deliberate action. Okay? They locate all their outposts within the population, thus expose them to what happens once they use those locations in order to shoot at our children. What do you say about that? Are you for or against this kind of military act?
All right. Omar, what's your response to that?
I am neither a fan nor a defender of Hamas or its tactics or many other things. However, you have an imbalance.
You are defending them throughout this program. Don't make it seem different from what it is. Don't count.
In my mouth. The difference is Israel has a long history of using Palestinians as human shields, and Hamas is a guerrilla group that does not have advanced weapons.
For heaven's sake, you're just making it up.
It's a government. It's a government. There's a
population in the entire area.
Right. Yes.
Okay, Abdel Bari Atwan. Abdel Bari Atwan, I want to get away from what we are talking about right now. We see this. It seems we're seeing a cycle here. We see a Palestinian uprising, then we see an Israeli response. This is not the first time this has happened. I mean, there are many analysts and commentators who are now saying, even here in the United States, that the two-state solution is dead and buried. So where does it go to from here?
Okay, let us have one-state solution. The Palestinian and the Muslim, the Jews, the Christian to live together on equal footing. Without this terrorism, without this settlement, without this actually starvation of the people. If they don't want two-state solution, let us go to one-state solution, which is the better or the best solution for everybody. So why? They are saying we are civilized and we will have coexistence. Okay, let us approve it on the ground. Yeah, but they are not listening to us at all. This is the problem. They believe that they can do everything. Did the United States, for example, send aircraft carrier to help the Palestinians when the Israeli massacred more than 2,200 people, half of them children and women in 2004, as Omar said? No, they didn't. Now they want to send the aircraft carrier to help the Israeli to bomb Hezbollah, to bomb Syria, to bomb. This is the problem. Let us sit and talk frankly about these kind of things. We are a victim. We have been a victim for 75 years. I am a refugee. So my people, our people, they would like to go back to their land, like everybody. So why they deprived us from that, and why they are killing us day after day, week after week, year after year? Listen, the circle of death is coming from the Israeli. Go back to Amnesty International report about Israeli apartheid.
Okay, Mitchell, you wanted to say something. Go ahead.
No, there's nothing to say. You can't have a conversation here. Meaning, as soon as there's justification or explanation of why Hamas, first of all, a guerrilla organization, Hamas is the majority elected representative of the Palestinian people. And even in polls that were done by Khalil Shikaki in September said if Haniya runs against Abu Mazen, who just, congratulations, started the 16th year of his 4-year term, he would win 2-1. That's what the Palestinian people want. They're voting for this terror organization that pays terror, that is
because
violent.
you humiliated
So what do you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen?
Okay, we can't have two people talking. Abdel, Bari, Atwan, one moment.
Instead of having people that they're trying to sit down with Israel and with the international community and leverage something, you elect people that want to target civilians, indiscriminately fire rockets, which is a war crime as well, into Israeli civilian populations. It's a terrible thing. And you know what? I feel pity for the innocent people in Gaza. And there are probably many, many innocent people, including children and others, that are stuck with this government that keeps getting elected or that is in power. But, you know, in the name of Allah, it's really disgusting. It's really sad that this is how that you people live there in Gaza and expect everyone to have sympathy. And Omar, you must be delusional to think the America and the international community is going to support and try and stop, you know, the violence and stop the Israelis from reacting when you've actually unified Congress.
Okay.
And the Senate.
All right, we are rapidly running out of time. Mitchell, I want to get to Omar Baddar. Omar, what is you want to say something? What is your response? Go ahead.
We have the cause and effect backwards here. You have a situation in which Israelis keep electing leaders who are imposing permanent military occupation and apartheid on top of Palestinians, stealing their land and denying them their basic rights, and then they're surprised when Palestinians vote for unsavory characters who are carrying out attacks. Again, this will not be solved until Palestinian rights are recognized, until Israel starts seeing Palestinians as equal human beings, and until Palestinians can live in freedom. No people anywhere on the planet would accept living without freedom for decade after decade. This explosion is just going to happen, and unfortunately, we're on the wrong trajectory.
All right, Amotz, you get the last word. We've only got 30 seconds.
Yeah, the record.
Go ahead.
Palestinian rights were recognized in Oslo, and then at Camp David, and then by Olmert when he faced Abu Mazen repeatedly. Israel recognized Palestinian rights and was ready and, in fact, eager to establish the two-state structure that would have had us and them living peacefully alongside each other. That was our vision, at least my part of Israel. That was our vision. And it was rejected repeatedly by the Palestinians. What we face today is, therefore, the result of that rejection, and not of any preconceived Israeli conduct, as you suggest, Omar.
Okay, we are going to have to leave it there. No doubt we'll have a chance to get everyone back on the show one of these days. Thank you to all of you for being with us. And that is it for this edition of The Heat. I'm Arnold Naidu in Washington, D.C.